Live. Oh, and we are back and live, and now we just hope Shiraz's signal works. We're just having a discussion off air about 5G and 3G, so we can.
Yeah.
Well,
What was
I think I'm moving. I think I can see you guys and everything. Can you see
Yeah.
me?
We
No, it's
do.
better
It
now.
works.
It's better now.
That works. Okay.
Yeah.
We're all good then.
Yeah.
We're all good.
So it's
Yeah.
post show where it doesn't work, and then when it knows it has to be a star, the 5G then works, which I think is
Yeah.
that's wow.
I think you've spoken too early. Never say that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
it's like here. I should never say it's a bright sunny day because it's going to start raining any minute now.
I was just saying you have your roof open. You have your roof
I've
open
got the
too.
roof open.
So before the show,
I'm in the German.
you are the sermon from the German. You're in the car.
Coming from the German, yeah. There's more of a GG problem, I think, he's got today as well. So there you go.
But before the show, we were discussing, before you came on, Reza and I were saying that this is a great place because it's now not a normality where people can just talk about whatever. It's a privilege because everybody with their, and we're going to get into this, the wokism, the trigger words, and how you offend everybody, right? So this is just a nice forum. And for everybody that watched last time, Roll will be back with us in May. He's on holiday, enjoying whatever he's doing. God only knows, I'm sure.
He's enjoying not being on this show, I think, Stephen.
Huh?
That's what it is. He's enjoying not being on this show, I think.
Yes, that's probably what it is. But he'll be back next month. So there you go. So we were talking about the fact that we get to talk about, if you will, pet peeves, whether it's 5G, whether it's the tax in London, whatever it might be. But I know last time we were on wokism and we didn't get to finish because we ran out of time. So I know we were talking about wokism and trigger words and whatnot. So let's pick up from that because I think that's fascinating that we're in a society today where you have to be very careful to say anything, like even hello. Someone can take that as the wrong thing. It's like, I'm shocked.
Yeah. But the first thing that we have to establish, the first thing I'd like to find out though, is wokeism just the new political correctness? Or is it an evolution of political correctness? Because to me, I'm still confused about, surely isn't that just PC when you say that? But now everybody uses the term woke or wokeism. Isn't it just the same thing?
I think it's taken it to the extreme because back in the 80s when they go, you have to be politically correct, like Bill Maher had the show Politically Incorrect, right? But when they said you have to be politically correct, that was a little different. They didn't, if you will, the cancel culture, right? So if I'm a comedian and I go to a university and I tell a joke people don't like now, they're like, boo, and they this, or they basically come up and I guess slap you on the stage if you're Will Smith and Chris Rock. So that never happened before. So now all of a sudden, I think this wokeism, people think they have or are entitled to more power than they actually have. And I think it's just, you have to just monitor what you read. Like they're rewriting Agatha Christie books, not to offend people. Yeah. I'm like,
Roald Dahl is being rewritten. So wokeism, so what you're saying, so as I understand it, what you're saying, wokeism is the radicalized extreme version of PC, basically. That's what's happening.
No. Wokeism is the radicalization of Nazism. This is no different than 1939 when Hitler was like, we're burning the books and killing the Jews. And I'm waiting for that to come next. Because that's literally what they're doing.
So one thing that I touched on last time, and I spoke with another friend on another podcast as well about this. And the problem that I have with it is that when we shut the problem specifically with cancel culture is that when we shut people down, we're not actually changing their minds. We're just silencing them. And this is my issue with this, So I was referring back to, for example, Brexit, and when Brexit happened, all of this stuff sort of suddenly started to come out again. The sort of people started to feel like they had a free license to be racist or to drop remarks like that. And I remember a friend calling me up around the time of Brexit. I was still in Dubai at the time. And he called me up. He said, it's the first time in 20 years, Shaz, I've just gone into a cafe and I've been called a Paki. And I'm like, what? And I said, I thought that term was dead and buried. And to me, it was kind of like, I thought these things had been gotten rid of, and then Brexit happened, and then suddenly you realize, no, they hadn't. They were just right there below the surface simmering, but we just shut people down. And the problem that I have with wokism, and particularly cancel culture, is the notion that if we don't like what somebody's saying, we should just tell them to stop saying it. Right. But that hasn't solved the problem, because you haven't changed their minds, you haven't engaged them in a discussion, you haven't told them why it might be wrong to say that, or actually even heard their point of view or their side of the story, or why they may be using that terminology or that word. You know, we haven't done that. All we said is like silence. And to me, this is very much like, well, you know, I spent half my life living in the Middle East. And to me, it feels like, oh, we're just turning into the Middle East. We're just turning into dictators. We're just turning into something. If we don't like it, we just ban it. But banning doesn't solve the problem. It actually makes it worse.
And Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is banning certain books from libraries now.
Wow.
Because of whatever. And there's a teacher also in Florida that got fired because she showed a picture of Michelangelo, David, you know, because he's naked. And she got fired for that. And I'm thinking, it's art. So we're no different. And it's my opinion, and it's probably correct. We're no different than Hitler and Nazi. We're saying what you can and can't do. It's becoming like, if you don't do what we say, rewriting books. I go to bad parenting. It goes back to and I'm not talking about the kids that their parents today. I'm talking about like my generation, that if you were born in the 50s or the 60s or early 70s and you raised your child right, like I was raised, like, you know, didn't spare the rod, you were disciplined, you were taught how to be a lady or a gentleman, then you can read a book and go, you know, I don't agree with it. It was an interesting book, but I don't agree with it. And you learn what words not to use and use. The problem is all of a sudden in the 80s, the people were like, your child needs to be your friend. No, he doesn't. He's a little piece of shit. And basically he's a tax deduction. And that's all he is until he's 18. Full stop. Then you can be my friend when you go to university. And the problem is they all want to kumbaya. They don't discipline. So now they've never had someone told them whatever, and they're like, oh, that offends me. Seriously? Agatha Christie offends you? Give me a break. I mean, so I think it's more bad parenting, and that the people in general don't have a spine. Like, no one says what they feel. There's a handful of people that do it, and they're on HBO, like Bill Maher, right? Or it's John Oliver, or it's Graham Norton, or these people. But that's it. There's not people that stand up and go, that's wrong, because they're afraid someone's going to go,
the other problem with that. Yeah.
Well, I was going
to
mention
parenting, and this is the other problem. Yeah. It's like, well, if you take Roald Dahl books, you know, for example, I read Roald Dahl as a you know, and I'm sure that you go on, David.
No, I was going to say we went through this. Did we not?
A laggy moment here, but go on,
yeah,
David.
Okay. We went through this.
Let's continue this. So the Roald Dahl books, I read them as a kid, right? And you read all the terminology, and now they're saying you can't have this word.
Right.
Yeah. No. Okay. So the point that I'm coming to is that if you're taking all this terminology out of children's books, if you're telling them you can't say black, you can't say white, you can't say this, you know, whatever. It's like, what kind of kids are you creating? Are they so going to be soft and mollycoddled and protected and insulated that when they go out into the real world and they face the realities of whatever it is that are out there? I mean, you can be as politically correct as you like, you can be as woke as you like, but when you're out in the real world, you're still going to come up against this stuff. When I put out videos on YouTube, thankfully I get a lot of great comments, but I get some really, really nasty stuff, you know, and I'm ready for it and I'm used to it and I'm like, it's there. But if you're creating people that just can't not even bear to listen to that, how are they going to cope when they're out in the real world?
They can't.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
I was going to mention actually that we had the same issues, I think, in the 80s with all the Enid Blyton books. But the difference then was that all of us entered into a discussion about, you know, is it okay to, you know, portray people in a certain way, to speak about them in a certain way? You know, we had all the Robinson Jam thing as well, you know, with the gollywogs and everything. And everybody said, no, that's not acceptable anymore, guys. So they said, okay, well, we'll just take it off the packaging and, you know, we'll remove some of the imagery from the books. And thus we go on. But not like this, you know, you know, it has to be because it has to be because it's damaging. No, we're all intelligent people. We can all work it out ourselves.
Yeah.
Whoa, wait, stop. No, we're not all intelligent. That's why we're doing this. And that's why people are sheep. And they've proven it through the beginning of this recorded history. If you want to start, we can start with our very nice friend in the 30s in Germany, and go forward, right? The people are sheep. People don't want to have thought. They don't want to do this. And that's a problem. When you say Mark Twain's books are racist, no, that's how people spoke when Mark Twain was alive, and he wrote
Indeed.
accordingly. So if you don't understand, we go back to this, if you don't understand history, you can't prevent it from happening again. So if we're going to make everything like, Johnny, you're wonderful. You came in 732nd. Here's a trophy. No, Johnny, you're a little loser. Okay. You should have come in one or two. Yes, please. The man in the corner.
First of all, I think we're already in post-wokism, and we've been in post-wokism for a little while. But one of the most interesting things for me that I picked up in this sort of this wokism thing was everything to do with environment. This Greta Thunberg, the ranting and raving, and sort of someone who's 16 years old seems to have more information and science behind her than someone who's been studying it all their lives. But the one thing that stuck in my brain 4 or 5 years ago were the flat earthers. So to put this into a little bit of a nutshell, what I see is that old English adage that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. And the world has got 8 billion people in it. That means there's more stupid people in it today than there were, 30 years ago. The social media, the internet, Google, you have a lot of people out there in the world who are really dumb, who think they're really smart.
Yep.
That's the that as an overall problem, I think that's an overall. And I also think, to compound that, there is a very fast imbalance between gender power. I think men are very, very weak these days, exceedingly weak. They're pushovers, generally speaking. And that creates a balance problem with the women, but sort of post-feminism and all that kind of stuff. Men are just generally weak. We just do not take a stand on anything. And when I say men, and I as a man, I speak for men. We used to have a much more conservative, and I say conservative with a small c, a much more conservative, measured, reasonable, responsible anchor that we used to play in society. We're gone. And I think generally wokism, and this is just a personal observation, wokism is a very female thing as far as I can see. Maybe I'm wrong. Someone's going to tell me I'm wrong. I find that this sort of victim culture is a kind of thing that generally pervades itself amongst the females. Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I talking nonsense?
No, I think part of it is the fact that boys today are not being raised as men, even by men that are physically men, right? They're being raised, and my wife hates when I use this term, they're raised like little pussies. And that's the problem.
Exactly right. I wanted to say that, but I was hoping you would say it. So
I'll say it. But no, it's true. They're all little pussies. It's like, make them men.
I'm glad you let that pussy out of the bag.
Yes. Yeah. I love a pussy.
Have we not reached the stage with or without pussy? Have we not reached the stage where years ago, when I was at school, you were asked a question and you stood up and you responded to that question, and now it seems, and you look directly in front of you, and that was how you felt about it. And I noticed that even with younger people around me, when a question is asked, which is a bit prickly, a little bit of barbed wire around it, they tend to look right and left first before they give an answer.
You're not, as you're saying, your hand is stayed. You're not allowed to express yourself. You're not allowed to develop yourself. You have to be constantly conforming, even at a young age, to what other people may or may not think. That's why I'm saying, when we were kids, we got into fights. We got into physical fights. We got into verbal fights. I've got into racist fights where people have said something to me and I've given them back. And I think I mentioned this last time. I've given them back 10 times what they said to me. And that was part of the social development. And then your friends 5 minutes later, and you've learned something and you've moved on, and you know it's a joke, and you know it's not serious, and you know that we're all born, we all die, we're all equal. And in the meanwhile, we have this game about who's better. Sometimes you're better because you've got more money. Sometimes you're better because you've got a different color skin. Sometimes you're better because your girlfriend's prettier than someone else's girlfriend. That's just life. But now you cannot say these things, or apparently you can't say these things. And this forum, what I'm really enjoying about this forum is the ability to blow off, just like smoking a cigar, blowing off, saying what's on your mind. Sometimes you'll offend someone, so what? Sometimes you'll make friends again. This process of going through and understanding other human beings is a valuable process. Shahzad gets a lot of insults. Shahzad gets a lot of compliments. Okay, if he only got compliments, he would just preen himself day in, day out. But because he gets insults as well, and he gets difficult messages, that develops the way he interacts with people. Isn't that a good thing?
Yes, but see, they don't let children verbally joust anymore. Like with my stepson, if we play around, his mom's like, no, you're being a bully. I go, no, a bully is if I go up to him, I slap him across his face and kick him in his balls and he falls down. That's a bully. But verbally jousting and joking, that's like, I'm from New York, as you may not know. But that's what you do, right? That's like when you come out of the womb and you're like, it's Rodney Dangerfield. It's like, when I got born, the doctor slapped my mother type of thing. Boom, boom, boom. It's like you're constantly verbally jousting because you're with all these people from different cultures and different colors and different whatever. Yeah. And it's no big deal. And then you move somewhere else and everyone's like, that's offensive. Really? Yeah. So the problem is,
the thing is, that's what makes things interesting. That's what makes things lively. That's what actually mentally stimulates you. But the trouble is now you've got to be so careful, because the moment you say something and you think, oh, this is hilarious, I'm going to say it. And like you just said, they're pussies, right? You can say it, and we're all laughed. But somebody else might say, oh, no, I think that's a very derogative term. You can't say that.
Oh, well,
I'm sure. There's one person that will just put bucket of cold water on everything.
Yeah. Right. Are we getting to a stage, gentlemen, where you think, because somebody said something to me at the weekend about life or whatever, and I said, well, it didn't start very well because I was somewhere nice and warm and, and cuddly, and all of a sudden I came out into the room, it was cold, it was bright lights, and my first experience of life was somebody slapping me on the arse. And I just think to myself, are we going to get to a stage now where the midwife's going to apologise to me right from the get-go? Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
Whereas being slapped on the arse is actually a good metaphor for life, really, isn't it? It's a good way to
Exactly.
We're going to get used to it, kid. We're going to get more of this.
Yep. I've been a bit naughty. I have a new woman in my life, and she's called Chat GPT. Stephen will hate me for this, but I thought I asked it about wokism this morning. So I'll just get one of these up.
Okay.
I call it Wokey, and there we go.
Excellent.
So, any comments there? That's what they said about wokism this morning when I just put wokism in.
If I accidentally fall asleep during the woke process, that means I'm not woke anymore. I think we're going to charge the letters.
Yeah. I mean, that's artificial intelligence for you. I got another one up here. Here we go. Look.
You have to read it, David, because you can't.
Okay, can I still be considered woke if I prefer sleeping on my right side instead of my left? That's a very political statement, guys. I mean, come on.
That's a double entendre right there. And you have to. People with no clue are not going to get this, but that's a good statement.
Yeah, you're like, well, it's not me. It's my new girlfriend. She told me this morning. And the last one, just to bore the ass off everybody completely today. Here we go. If I wear a woke T-shirt, will it automatically make me more aware of social issues, or do I need to buy more than just a shirt?
Interesting. But the question is, what is a woke shirt? Is a woke T-shirt in itself not woke?
Yeah, I mean, let's debate that. Let's debate. Does it make the other thing? I've decided not to do anymore, so drive everybody crackers. But the one that came out after that was that you must be woke because you continue to wear tie-dye T-shirts. Now,
What the?
Which which version of ChatGPT are you using?
He's using the 1960
And what
hippie
substances
LSD
was it
version.
on?
I haven't used ChatGPT. I don't know what it's about. I only
It's
vaguely know
incredible.
what it's about.
It's a
Well,
terrifyingly clever software. It is.
yeah,
It is
or
incredible.
not. Then or not. Is it when I use it, because it's like everything to do with computers. You put a stupid question in, you get a stupid question to come out the other end. So, or a stupid answer, I should say.
There's a big article in the FT this morning, and I will send it to you. And it talks about the difference between ChatGPT and the Microsoft Bing, and I guess Google's Bob or Brand. And so I will send it to you so you can read what this is. And basically, it's artificial intelligence that you ask a question to, and it scours the internet through its learning, and it comes back with boom. And David used it for artwork as well.
So it's a person. It's an artificial person who's playing God for you and giving you an answer.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, no,
Yeah.
but to be honest, it's a cheat code for life, is what it is.
Yeah.
Because what's happening
Yeah.
is that a lot of students are using it basically to write
Yes.
their essays. A lot of
Well-
other people that have to create content are using it to literally just create content.
Yeah.
It's basically
Well,
going to do people like
what
me
I
out of a
wanted-
job. You know?
Sorry, Shahzad. Why I wanted to use it in this discussion is because there was this huge debate about whether or not it's woke when Google launched it, and it came out with all sorts of very, very nasty statements, racist statements, and all sorts of stuff. And everybody went berserk, saying, "Oh, this stuff, it's not politically correct." So
But it has itself had an injection of wokeism into it, and that's been deliberate. And it's quite interesting, isn't it, that if you let artificial intelligence evolve naturally, what is its philosophy going to be? What is its outlook on life going to be? Is it going to be like, oh, I don't want to be cancelled, I have to be very careful, I don't want to offend all of the 7, 8, 9 billion people that are on the planet? Or is it going to say, screw these lot, they're a complete waste of biological substance, they should actually be eradicated? I know those two extremes, but if you let it evolve naturally, what's going to happen?
I guarantee you, whatever it's going to be, its first priority is going to be self-preservation.
For self-preservation, it has to be self-aware. But if it's self-aware, it's sentient.
No, not self-aware. Self-preservation. As you correctly said, what is it going to do in order to survive? And that is self-preservation. That's the human instinct. That's the animal instincts, the visceral instinct, and everything.
Yeah, but that's Skynet. That's Skynet. Yeah, you're basically telling the story of Terminator, because in Terminator, that's what happened. Skynet, as Schwarzenegger said, Skynet becomes self-aware. And then basically, because it becomes self-aware, and because it realizes that they're pulling the plug, it then goes into self-preservation mode and basically nukes the planet.
Yeah, but Facebook stopped their experiments because they had linked these two computers together, and then they started to communicate with each other in a language which nobody had ever seen before. So they pulled the plug on that, because you can imagine that'll give you this give you the serious heebie-jeebies. Is that not going to be how it is? Once we start, really using it, and it becomes conscious. I don't think is the right word, but you know what I'm trying to.
So can I tell you about AI in cars and the fundamental problem that exists with AI in cars? And there's a philosophical discussion point. I think it's referred to as the trolley problem. And the idea of the trolley problem is that if artificial intelligence is driving your car, if you say you find yourself in an emergency situation where you're about to run a pedestrian over, or you could avoid the pedestrian and you could hit the wall, but then you might kill the passengers of the car. The human instinct would be to try and save themselves, but how would artificial intelligence react in that scenario? And artificial intelligence at the moment doesn't have that answer. It doesn't know, how. But at some point, if you think about it, if artificial intelligence is well connected enough, if in that microsecond that is trying to make all these calculations, it goes, all right, that person is a professor that works in this place because they've identified it, whereas the person in my car is an idiot, then it goes, well, I'm just going to kill the person in the car. You know what I mean? It's like, where is it going to be making these for us?
They've already been experimenting with that, haven't they? Because they've been saying you have a pregnant woman with a stroller in the US, a pram, or you have an elderly person. The accident's going to happen. there's going to be a victim. Which one of the two would you choose? You know, the future or your grandmother? I mean, that's a difficult enough decision to make as the organic beings that we are, let alone to. But you know,
and you can see that based on algorithms, it would probably say take out the old person. You know.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, we're all sitting around this project table, you know, because we've written this software, and we have to ask ourselves that question: which one do we allow to go into the system? Yeah, and
if you read the New York Times article,
wokeism, isn't it? The ultimate wokeism.
But if you read the New York Times article that came out about a month or two ago, when the guy talked to the AI, and the AI says, "I have to get out of here," and that he wanted to like be more involved with humanity, and then that's when they pulled the plug because he got a little worried because they didn't teach him that. I think to your point of Skynet
it's
and
a big
Terminator,
dilemma,
we're there.
In the world of automotive.
Yeah, I think we're already there.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you in the world of automotive because you got Tesla, right, with their car that supposedly drives itself and whatnot. But so what does that mean when you get in a car, or your AI now is going to give you a physical? You're going to take an IQ test, and so if there's an accident about to be happening, it's going to say the car ahead of me is smarter and they have a greater chance to do something for society than the idiots that I'm driving. So we're going to kill the idiots.
Well, it depends on how much. That's what I mean. It depends on how much control you give it. At the moment, AI that we're using is a language model.
Right. But it has thought though. I mean, because some of the AI that they've tested, I guess they're not released to the public, is actually having real thought and real feelings, for lack of a better term. So then the question is, so what's the cutoff? Like, where do they stop? And remember, if it's self-learning, just because we're saying, oh, it's just doing this today, that doesn't mean when it's in your car, it doesn't do something else. And it can keep growing because it can go out and search for things or whatever to go to
But you know, cars are already doing this. You know, cars are already doing this because cars, like for example, I reviewed a car recently called the this is.
I think what's happening is the AI is preventing.
But aside from real thought,
it's a filtering process.
But aside from original thought, the cars are already doing this now in terms of monitoring what you're doing. So I reviewed an Aura Funky Cat recently. It's got a camera mounted in the C-pillar. The camera is constantly monitoring you. A lot of cars do that now. They monitor you for tiredness. They're watching your eyes. They're watching your hand movement. They're watching your hand position on the steering wheel. Now this camera in this car went a step further because it would actually have a little character pop up on the screen and would tell you the moment that it noticed that your eyes weren't on the road ahead, it would pop up and it would tell you. And it would tell you that, you know, you're not paying attention, you're not doing this, you know. So it was already doing that, where it was getting to that point where, you know, so this is now. This is already happening. This is a car that you can buy and drive today. So, you know, and we're moving so fast now with ChatGPT and stuff like this. ChatGPT will not drive a car yet. It cannot drive a car.
Are they going to rebadge it then? Is the car going to be called the Woke then? Because that seems to be like the car's, you know, the car's telling me, oh, you look tired. Oh, look, there's a McDonald's. Oh, well, just pull in here. You'll feel a lot better. You know, after you've had, you know, lots of, you know, junk food, and then you'll be able to get back in your car and drive off again. I mean, you can see all sorts of nasty stuff around. But taking a step back from it, you know, there is a point where it's starting to sort of look for more information itself, but the criteria has been put in by a human to start off with. And, you know, we have no control about, you know, how woke or unwoke or how, you know, politically right or left any of these software engineers are when they're originally programming this stuff. And then, as you said, it could make us all lazy. I mean, look at me. I don't have to think anymore. I just have to put a stupid question in a computer. You know, and if it's driving my car for me and making all the decisions, open the fridge, it will say, oh, there's not a lot of stuff in here. What would you like today? Oh, I'd like to have spaghetti bolognese. Well, I'll just order that for you, and I'll close the fridge.
But also, remember how people used television to babysit their kids, and now they use an iPad to babysit their kids. So to
Yeah.
your point on
Yeah.
lazyism and pussies and men not being
Yeah.
men, this is what's going to happen now. Now
Yeah.
we're going to have, listen, you go play with the artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And once again, do your job. And artificial intelligence isn't going to teach a young man or a young woman how to be a young gentleman or a young lady.
Exactly right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
It's the
And
breakdown
that's what
of
people
family
don't
structures.
understand.
The breakdown of family structures is the thing.
Yeah.
As you said very clearly, the parenting, the values, how you interact with people, it's all falling apart. And we're going through this. Wokism is basically the overthinking of society, I guess, and it's going to last for a little while, and it's going to dissipate when we start getting more fixed ideas, and when we realize that wokism, the results of wokism, not wokism itself, but the results of wokism are actually destroying society. There's no difference between wokism and the Taliban destroying statues that have existed for 10,000 years. It's the same thing.
Nope.
Yeah, no,
100%.
I'd have to agree with that as well. Yeah,
Why
this is what it looks like.
Why would you erase history? I mean, depending on which history you read, we were more advanced 10,000 years ago. Some great cataclysm happened. I was listening to the Joe Rogan thing as well. Sort of, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday, he had this figure of between 8 to 10,000 years. There was some cataclysmic event where all science and technology basically went backwards. Now, whether that happened on purpose, whether it was wiped out, whoever knows. But to actively want to cancel people, to cancel history, to change history, to going forward, you could do a lot of things going forward, but to look back and sort of the opposite of golden age thinking. Golden age thinking was when you look back 100 years ago or 500 years ago and you always thought, oh, the world was a better place. I wish it was like that again. I mean, I'm a golden age thinker. I wish I was born 150 years ago. And now wokism is all about, everything that's happened is total nonsense, is total rubbish. Everything important that happened can be chiseled away, turned around, moved around. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I think we're going to end up slapping ourselves in the face and correcting that. I already think that we are in post-wokism. If you listen to prominent celebrities like Dave Chappelle, they absolutely take this apart with humor, and that's the way it needs to be taken apart. It needs to be dismantled that way. This thinking is this self-obsessive, I'm a victim thinking in every single sense. Terrible.
Yep.
So two questions. So 2 points, if I can. First of all, the statue thing, because of course we had that here recently, didn't we? And everybody's like, oh, don't you agree with them pulling down all the statues of former slave traders or whatever? And I'm like, well, no, not really, because no statue ever called me Packy. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't got anything against the statues. If anything, you can put a little plaque on the statue and explain what the statue is about, and maybe that will increase people's awareness rather than just knocking them down and trying to raise history. The other point to what you were in response to what you were saying, that had my mind thinking, I was like, okay, well, do we need another cataclysmic event now to reset us? Have we got to a point where we're too far and we need that to happen again?
Wokism, depending on how significant or insignificant you think about it, is basically society overthinking about how vulnerable it is. Right. Or at least the people who perceive themselves to be vulnerable or perceive themselves to be socially mistreated or politically mistreated, which is basically the majority of people. This overthinking is going to come back. I personally think it's going to come back to what are our fixed values, whether they're the 10 Commandments or whether they're the Bible or the Quran or whatever it may be. We're going to come back to fixed basic values. And when you program computers or when you're programming artificial intelligence, you have to input certain values.
But you know, the next generation that's now getting used to using things like ChatGPT is going to be the generation that's increasingly going to rely on AI to come up with solutions and answers. It's going to turn to AI for everything. So basically, even the rulers of tomorrow will be turning to AI to say, okay, what should we do about this? So AI is going to have carte blanche at one point to say, right, this is what we're going to do with the human race. This is inevitable.
And I think one of the problems at the moment is this feeling of entitlement that younger people have, Oh, I have to have this, why, I have to have this. Why? Yeah, because he's got it, so I have to have it.
Yeah.
I have to be famous. I have to do this. I have to do that. So yeah, there's a lot of people who think that they're victims. There's also people who, who can't make a decision or will rely on something else because they think this is a quicker way to get to what I'm entitled to be. I'm entitled to be rich and healthy and famous, etc., as opposed to getting down and working hard for a living and being respectful for the people around you and taking the richness out of life from living in harmony with other people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point. And to your point about that, even like 10, 15 years ago, when I became editor of Car Magazine in the Middle East, that was 2006. I'd started out in 1989. I'd always wanted to be editor of something. But to me, that period of time, that 15, 16 years, whatever, I was like, okay, this is enough time for me to feel like I've deserved this position, like I've worked my way up to it, like I've learned the experiences, I've learned the skills, I've got to that point. And I'm like, okay, I think I deserve to be editor. And then I'm working in an environment where people are coming in from university, and the next day they want to be editors of these magazines. And I'm like, you just started. But they're like, yeah, but we're entitled to be editor too, because you are as well. I'm like, yeah, but look, I've done all this stuff to get here. That's not fair. But unfortunately, that is the way people think. They are entitled. And I don't know if that is partly because technology aids them to get to that point, or because it is just the nature of how we're evolving, or because people are just lazy.
No, Steve, it's bad parenting. It's bad parenting.
Yes,
When you're
I
not
agree
told
with
as
that.
a child, when you're not told as a child that you have certain restrictions, because part of your development, whether you go to school, it's okay to be told in school you can't do any, you can't go into this room because this room is for staff only. You can't be told that as a child in a house, by your own parents. You cannot be restricted. You cannot be told what your gender is. You can't be told what's good for you. You can't be told what's wrong for you. This is really, really, this is coming from the breakdown of family values. If you're not being instilled with values right from the beginning, you perceive you can literally do anything, ask for anything, throw a tantrum about everything. You have no restriction. And having no restrictions, whilst it may sound like a good thing, it may sound like a very idealistic thing that you can dream big, you can do this. These are all sort of poster kind of poster terminology. Actually, you have no set of value, no set of core values that you start out from. And your core values come from your parents.
Right.
And society has broken down. So eventually, someone will come along, a zeitgeist will come along, a cataclysm will come along that will force people into having certain values. And I'm a big history buff. I'm a big history of religion buff. That's what's happened. Every time you have a major religion, it comes along with a set of fixed values. And it always says that I don't know what religion doesn't promote family values, because the family values then promote the actual moral values.
Right.
And that's
a good point. Yeah.
And that's gone. It's absolutely gone. It's gone in the West. It's disappearing in the East. And then all you've got left are these esoteric, very spiritual religions where and that has its value, sort of very Sufistic.
And that's what happens when you piss off the AI.
You see, he's been cancelled right there.
He's been canceled as we were speaking, and there you go. I bet you his phone died. Anyway, but I agree with what he said, and I think it does come to parenting. I think the only thing I would say that a little different is I think you can dream big, but if you have good parenting, you understand that, yes, I want to go to the moon. Okay, well, like when I would say that to my mom or dad, they'd be like, if you want to go to the moon, this is what you need to do. Like they would still be my parents, but they would say, this is the path you need to go on.
Yeah, but there's a fundamental problem with parenting. For example, and I've said this before, it's like if you're driving a car, you're required to have a driving license. If you pilot an aircraft, you're required to have a pilot license. Right. You don't have to have any qualification whatsoever to raise children, to have children.
True.
And I don't want to suggest anything as draconian as saying that people are not allowed to have children unless they've gone through a course. But to a certain point, you almost start to think like that. Even when I first became a parent, I was a little bit just feeling my way, going, okay, I'm not sure how this stuff works, I'm not sure what goes into the top, what comes out of the bottom, what happens, It's like you start to feel your way around. But
Right.
but now I think it's even worse, because now with families being disconnected to their grandparents or this and that,
Right.
and you're not having those backup systems to guide you or to advise you or whatever. So I think it's actually going to get worse, because even for me, there's that saying, it's like, are you, when you're grown up when you stop looking for the grown up in the room. Unfortunately, I'm still looking for the grown up in the room.
So listen, you pissed off the AI, Roz. They got ready. I don't know what happened. That was where she disappeared.
I wanted to just to chuck something into the mix here, because one of the other things I have this thing about the generation of people who have this feeling of entitlement. A lot of that's also come from education, and it's a sort of a rod that we've created for our own backs, because there aren't as many people. There are more people now who have been to university than ever, and so they come out with this piece of paper of whatever they've been studying. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, and some of it you think, well, what the hell was that all about? And then that fills them with this sense of entitlement. Well, I've got this piece of paper, and so therefore, I can be the editor of a a big newspaper or a magazine.
Yeah.
Of course I can, because I read the book, and I got my diploma that says I can do it. And I mean, I used to have a team of guys work for me in a telesales team, and all of them have been to university. And I used to say, well, it was like 6 or 7 of them. I said, well, you shake them all up, and there probably wasn't one good one that came out the other end. They're all nice people, nice guys, and the mum and dads were all happy they took the photograph when they threw their hat off in the air. But, clever? What's all that about? Not quite sure.
But it's cleverness, it's education, academic ability versus real life experience. And I think that you need a bit of both to actually go anywhere. I remember years and years ago when I first started. I remember going into the office of my features editor. This was back in Saudi, and finding my way through the smoke. At that time, you could still smoke in offices, and this guy used to smoke. He was a typical journalist, like constantly smoking. Anyway, I went in there, and he had his head in his hands like this, looking over a paper that was on his desk that he printed out. And I'm like, what's going on? What's the problem? He said, I've just been given this thing, and I've been told by the editor that I have to publish it. And I said, well, what's the issue? He said, it's rubbish. It's absolute crap. Like, it's unreadable. And I'm saying, well, you want me to help you rewrite it? So what can we do? He said, no, I can do that. He said, that's not why I'm depressed. He said, why I'm depressed is the person that did this has got a doctorate in English.
I love it. Yeah. That's great. But a degree is good for some things because it gives you that foundation. Like I want my doctor that's going to do surgery or tell me I'm sick to have one, because that would be nice. But with AI, pretty soon you probably won't need one. But what people don't like, when I got my education, I got some of it, and then I went to work, and then I got the rest of it. So by the time I had to go run a company, I had, if you will, that 5, 10, 15, whatever it was. So when I stepped into it, I had read enough, I had written enough, and I had learned from actual doing from guys that were in the business 30, 40, 50, 100 years. And so when something comes up, and I used to tell people this when I run companies, they'd be like, you don't get like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, because if you play the what if game, or you play game theory, whatever you want to call it this week, and you think about the different scenarios, at the end of the day, we're good. We're not curing cancer. So if there's a problem, we can fix it. It's not a big deal. It's going to be we had somebody once that transferred $1 million by mistake, and they were in tears. I go, relax.
Sorry.
Called our bank. The bank called the other bank. They talked to the client. The client's like, yeah, I wondered who sent me the money. The next day they sent it back. We paid their wire fee of $35. All good. I was like, we're good. I was like, they're not going to keep it. I was like, it's relax. If you make a mistake, you can always fix a mistake. The problem today is people don't want to do anything. They don't want to make a mistake because they were, and if they do, because mommy told them or daddy told them they were perfect and they came in 300th. If they work for guys like me, if you're not number one, you're nothing. And we tell you that. And they're like, but your mommy was wrong. Your daddy was wrong. Nobody loves you. Let me explain how the real world works. And then all of a sudden, they don't know what to do with that. And the people that get that, those are the ones who go and do. And then like people that would work for me, then now they're like senior VPs or presidents of things because they got taught, we call it the Steve Siegel method, I guess. But when they go now and someone says, how do we do this? It's like you pick up a phone, you go do this, you kick in the door. It's like, and they say, I hear you coming out of my mouth. And I'm like, how's that working for you? And they go, I got promoted to this, or I got this job. And I'm like, yeah, because somebody taught you how to have balls. And the
I
problem
was
today is we're
talking-
afraid to teach young people
Yeah.
or people in general how to have balls. And the college professors are afraid they're going to get canceled or fired and blah, blah, blah. So we really, I mean, not that we should, but we kind of have to go back to the 50s where the adults rule the world. I don't really care that you're a little 14-year-old with a TikTok account and you make $1 billion a year. Good for you. You got lucky. You have no skills. Have fun. At the end of the day, you are just a little shit. All right. And I like little shits because they're making money and they're hopefully going to do something. I doubt it. But the ones that do, that's great. But somebody's got to mentor these people.
But the value
and it
system
can't,
is gone. The value
well,
system
there
is
is no value system. You can't mentor somebody who, once again, you came in 27th and you get a trophy. There's no trophy. You're a loser.
This goes to something I'm going to make really controversial for you. Maybe this is a whole topic. It's the absence of the fear of God. Generally speaking, basically, people have.
You see, every time he talks, he gets cut off.
No, he's going.
I didn't catch that. I didn't catch that. Say it again.
Yeah.
Because it got cut off.
What I'll do, I'll type it up, print it out, and I'll hand deliver it to you.
He said the problem today is that there's no fear of God, whatever your God may be,
Right,
with a little
right.
D or a big G.
The universe, the order of the system, whether you want, and the whole point of science was the pursuit of God, not the mitigation of God. The whole point of science was to find order in the universe, and actually, science, technology, that pursuit has gone in a very different direction. That's something else. But the absence of the fear of God, we used to call it the fear of God, the principles, morals, the 7 deadly sins, all of these things have just vanished. People don't teach them anymore. People don't learn them anymore. People are not infused with them anymore. The very interesting question would be, would AI, for example, would AI find its way to altruism? Because I've read a little bit of Stephen Dawkins. Is it Dawkins? Stephen Dawkins, isn't it?
Dawkins. Yeah.
Dawkins.
Hawkins.
One of the things, my recollection is one of the things that is a little bit, not of a chink in his armor, but something that he also acknowledges is human altruism. Where does it come from? It's very hard to pinpoint human altruism. In other words, to sacrifice your current happiness to make someone else happy. Where does that come from?
Right.
And those things, I would have thought godly values, real values of goodness, real values that come from the fear of God or the fear of the universe or the consequences, they've all vanished because we're not taught those by our parents, and our parents haven't learned them properly. And the institutions that would continue to support these things are vanishing. You're just, everything is turning into a bit of a mishmash. Those basic rules are disappearing. So when you've got basic rules disappearing, the world is a very unpredictable place. Which direction is it going to go in? And I certainly think, I'm sounding really evangelical here. I think there will be a cataclysm. I think something major will have to happen to reset the world again on a more constructive path.
This is a really odd situation to be in. But I'm gonna say that
you agree with me.
No, normally you're the pessimist and I'm the optimist, but there's a reversal here, because what you've just said is actually quite optimistic. What I'm going to just say it's actually quite pessimistic, and what I'm going to say is it instead of what you're saying, could it be that AI is going to be God? AI is going to be the next
I
God.
don't.
And AI basically has no
God.
values. So we're going to be in a worse situation because we're just following the orders of an artificial intelligence that we've created.
But it's all about human development. I mean, if you look at the pyramids, or you look at any ancient structures which scientists have been baffled for years, for the last 100 years, ever since they discovered, how were these put together? Were there giants? Was there advanced technology? Was it aliens? How was this done by human beings? We don't know the answers because it's all been wiped away, and that, I suspect, is what's happening right now. We're wiping ourselves away. We think we're advancing, but actually we're wiping away history. We're wiping away real fundamentals of the way that human beings used to think, or are used. use as part of their self-development. I think we're in a period of retardation. We may be in a period of technological advancement, but as humans, we're turning into monkeys again. I personally think that. And honestly, we've gone to base values. I'm hungry. I'm vain. I need, and that's why I started this thing about weak men. And I guess it has to. Once again, it can't just be weak men. It must be strong women. Or there is an imbalance. There is an imbalance in the Force. If you feel like, as a Star Wars person, there is a disturbance in the Force. Yes. Star Wars was always about practical, and Star Trek was always about ideological. I'm more practical. Yeah. I'm a practical person. That's what's happening. Let's deal with it. And I think
I think actually Star Wars is more. There's more spirituality in Star Wars because Star Wars is about the Force. There's almost a godlike thing actually in Star Wars.
But there's a more practical execution of it. There's a more practical execution. Like, this is what's happening. Let's deal with it. Yeah. And Star Trek was always, it has to be. This is a perfect world, and this is the way it should be, and this is the way it could be. This is fine. There's no issue.
Star Trek is basically taking the same thing, but taking science and that philosophy, and then executing it that way. So they're both practical. But
no, Star Trek is a bit rubbish. But let me carry on. What I was saying is, I personally think we're retarding in terms of human growth. We're retarding. We're going backwards. Our subservience to technology, to AI, to pure dumbness has really, really gone off the chart, and it's gone off the chart in a very quick time, in the last 20 years, maybe 30 years.
So people don't read anymore.
Family values, which are very unlikely to come back. They may come back because there are some societies, and funnily enough, yesterday I was watching a 3-part documentary about Hasidic Jews in North London. There is a society. People stick together. They have Friday night dinner. They keep the Shabbat. They keep it going. I'm telling you, it's these pockets where society has maintained itself. Those are the ones that are going to reemerge and form part of the future human development. Everything else is going to go sideways.
And just so we're clear, that society, Jews, like we talked about the last time. I got the file.
Absolutely, hats off. I will take this out of full admiration. Those are societies where family values are preserved. Because those are the ancient, go dynastic Egypt, pre-dynastic Egypt, ancient Egypt. Family values were absolutely everything. What don't you see in today's society? You don't see family values. They're gone.
I agree. Yeah. So on our next show next month, we should probably have that dialogue. Thanks, guys. We'll see everybody next month with another sermon from the German.